Hello and welcome to my latest tutorial. I'm Callis and I'm going to be making a anime style PSX character in Blender. Now to do this, it's pretty simple in terms of modeling. You're going to have a much easier time doing this versus something realistic, which is a great place for someone to start if they're trying to learn 3D. So the first thing you'd want to do is to prepare your scene. Considering I'm making a humanoid character, what I've done is I've actually taken the model from the Unreal Engine, the default mannequin that they use for animations, and I've actually imported that into Blender. That's free to use by Epic. They provide it to all users of Unreal Engine, and it's just a great way to have a basis or reference of a simple humanoid. Um, Behind that, we've got actual artwork from the manga. This will give me a great idea of the uniform and the face of the character. You've seen that I'm on each orthographic axis, so this X or Y. I've got artwork of the character facing that particular direction. So we've got close-up of the face, and then body shots. We've got side views as well as a side view of the face, and then on the back is not as informative, but it's just nice to have. So this scene is actually ready, and I'm ready to model right now. If you just stay tuned, I'll get to starting that and explaining some techniques. Okay, so from here, I basically build the head on top of the proportion of the Unreal mannequin. This is why I had it in the first place. It's just going to help me make a really nice basis for a human. So I start with just a cube, and I start extruding and mirroring from there. To get to the shape of the head, I was really focusing on having a good strong chin, as well as a nice believable nose, as well as a really flat forward facing foundation for the eye texture as well, because you find in a lot of these retro models, these low poly models, that the eyes end up pointing in opposite directions or angled in strange ways, and that really kills any humanity in your character. So that's something I really focused on. I actually struggled with getting the nose bridge and face looking good, and I'm still working on that, I think. Really, I ended up finding triangles to be my salvation. Triangles aren't something to be worried about, really, guys. Triangles themselves aren't gonna harm your model, and I feel like it is a bad idea to avoid them to the detriment of your character. Same with topology as well. For your topology, you need to figure out how many polygons you want to use and the purpose of them. So for example, I have the ears here. I end up adding the ears as a separate object. I do that to first of all save polygons instead of connecting them to the head and potentially changing the shape of the face. I end up just throwing on a separate model, and that's doing me completely fine. With these low poly PS1 models, especially with the genuine articles, you'll notice, like for example, Solid Snake from Metal Gear, his arms are actually disconnected from his body, and that helped them a lot with the shape of the shoulders, in keeping its shape when rigged, because the lower polygons you have, the harder it is for you to keep the character's shape. Because when someone's making a regular model, a high poly model, they'll actually be reinforcing the character with more edge loops and more topology and more polygons in the elbows and the knees and the neck and so on to reinforce those areas, and that isn't something you can do with PS1. So I'm really considering starting with a body, but just considering with them on the head. The head itself, the hair is something I really need to worry about, because hair is super important to an anime character's style. Yuva himself has messy hair, and messy hair does not lend itself very well to low poly style. So I had a really interesting time trying to figure out how to make that uh, believable and good looking, and I took an approach of alpha channels, the alpha channel, using transparency. So I basically block out the shape of the hair, which took me quite a while actually. Um, the hair itself, I mean, I took about 3 attempts before I finally got the take that I liked. But I did that with pretty much just following the reference I was given on both axes, and using that to create the shape I like. I did make some tweaks for 3D. With 3D, when you make a 2D character in 3D, you're never going to get every perspective perfect. What's important is you recognize that, you work with the good perspectives you do have, and then you take that into account when you're making renders or animations. So for example, if I'm going to be making a render for this character, I would avoid bottom up. I would potentially go for more above looking down, and definitely directly sideways or straight on. Three-quarters view might be a bit dangerous with low poly characters like this, because you don't typically get great face shapes with such low polys. Anyway, here I'm trying to build up the hair. I'm using that with just regular cubes stretched out with the bottom taken away. I realized really early on that I was doing way too much. This is way too high poly for the character I'm making. A potential alternative is a single plane with a texture doing the work. However, that might still be too much, so I ended up just going with one. That single one might be enough for me. We'll have to see further on into the model. But after that, obviously you have to UV unwrap the model. Super easy with low poly. You can be dirty. You don't have to be super clean about things. And the intention is, clean up the hair, UV unwrap, and then begin to map out how I want the textures. And the texture is going to be super easy. If you are basing it off of an existing character, it's super cool because you can just either take images from online and apply them to the model via Photoshop and UV editing like I've showed in previous videos. However here, as well as for Ronnie, what I did is I basically just draw I just get an image, for example the head, and start drawing next to it to try and get the basic shapes, the basic eye shape, the basic nose, the basic mouth, and the placements there, so I can go back later with a bit of a higher fidelity, with a bit more detail and a bit more care. So right now, I didn't like the placement, so I just literally use the smudge tool to move the eyes closer in. It's awful, but it works in placing them where I want them. And you'll see next, I'm actually starting that with the hair as well. Now the hair, the alpha textures right here, the transparency is going to do all the work. With a messy hair, I've started UV unwrapping, applying transparency to the entire head, and then I start tracing out a bit of a jagged, crunchy texture for the edges, and I do that with the closest image texture, image filtering option, I should say. And that's what all PS1 models are using. That's what gives it the pixelated retro look. If you don't change this, you risk it looking a bit like N64, which isn't the exact aesthetic I was going for, the PSX aesthetic. But besides that, the head is looking pretty much done for now. I am questioning whether I should be making it grayscale or colored. Obviously, the manga itself is grayscale, so I'd be able to use accurate values there, and it would also look quite stylized. But if any of you have any opinions, do let me know. I'll take that well on board. And here's a quick turnaround of the character as it is right now, literally just the head. Yeah, just stay tuned. I'll be working on the body next. And yeah, hopefully we'll have this model finished.